episode 3 of your favorite podcast, the Zoom Out Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure that you follow on Spotify if you haven't already. Rate 5 stars and all that good stuff. Today is actually a very, very special episode. I've decided to make it so you guys don't have to only listen to my voice. I know you guys love it so much, but today I've decided to get my good friend and great teacher, actually, that I've known for like a good, 2-3 years now?
Yeah, 3 years probably, yeah.
Greg Potter, the lead singer of Stereo Ready, correct?
That's right. That's one of my personas. But Vaughn, it's great to be here with you.
All right. And now that we've gotten a little bit of a introduction going, how was your day so far?
My day so far has been pretty good. It's a beautiful day. We're in the fall here in the Philadelphia region, and it's about 68 degrees, sunny. There's not a cloud in the sky this morning. I'm sort of one of these people that I have a son who's in Scouts, and I've always been a little bit outdoorsy. I'm not like a rugged man or anything like that, as you would probably attest to knowing me, but I do love nature, and I like to just feel at peace outside. And
that's always the best.
Walking through campus today was gorgeous.
Yeah, absolutely. So, aside from, we'll get into the Stereo Ready stuff.
All
but, so your job here at Widener, because this podcast is currently based in Widener.
Yep.
What would you say? What is your job? Or what is your profession here?
So my title is Associate Vice President for University Relations. So I oversee a team that handles branding, communications, marketing, web, social media, crisis communications, all aspects of kind of marketing and communications at Widener. And I have a team of about 13 folks across all 3 of our campuses who do that work. And then I'm also privileged to be an adjunct faculty member in communication studies. So I teach audio and music production courses, and that's how we met.
Yes.
And I love that aspect of my job, being able to work on the administrative side and help the whole university kind of move forward with its, marketing and communication goals, but then also being able to teach and be hands-on with the students, making relationships with students is fantastic.
Okay, so first of all, I'm very glad to have you here.
Thank you.
To talk about
glad
this.
To be here with you. We've had many conversations, just the 2 of us sitting in this room, just casually. So it's nice to do it again.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So actually, how well would you say you enjoy your job?
I love this job. I'm in my 50s now, so this is my 3rd or 4th career change since I started when I was your age. And I worked in radio for a while. I worked in higher education right out of grad school at Widener University in a job that was really fun, but it was in student activities and student life. Had kind of hours where I came in at like noon and was there until 10 or 11 o'clock at night helping students with events and things like that, which was great when I was young, but it got kind of old once I started a family, and it didn't pay enough for me to raise a family. So I left that and I went into public relations for years. I worked at a hospital system for 12 years. Healthcare was never something I thought I would wander into, but it was a good career move for me. I ended up in a merger between 2 hospitals there, leading a communications team and helping the whole organization rebrand itself, come up with a new brand and a new mission and values based around that brand. So that was a really cool, kind of unique experience, being able to help a company do that. And after I was there for a while, I wanted to get back to higher ed, and that's kind of how I landed here at Widener. I was searching around for higher ed jobs, and Widener was looking for somebody to come in and help them sort of refresh their brand, and that's what I've been doing here at Widener for the last 7.5 years. I think we've been doing a pretty good job. We've got, I think, a pretty strong brand that speaks to who the university really is and what it means to be here, and it's been contributing, I hope, to some pretty good recruitment numbers over the last couple of years. We've seen a lot of strong classes come in a time.
956 of them this year.
So it's a big class, and so that's exciting.
All right. So in this job, what would you say would be the most important part of it to you? Would it be the actually interacting with the students, or would it be just like your actual doing your job at the current moment that you, I'm guessing, as you just explained, which would you say was the most important for you right now?
I think that everything we do at Widener is based on, creating a great community and experience for our students, because we're really a student-facing enterprise here. I mean, if it wasn't for the students, we wouldn't be in business, right?
Right.
And I think we need to distinguish ourselves at Widener by providing something to students that's unique and meets the needs of the students who are here, because you have a lot of schools you can decide to go to, and Widener needs to present something that's unique and offers the education and the community and all of that social experience that students need. And Widener's not the right fit for everybody, but for the students who come here that experience it, I think it's a great place. So I would say that the students are really the main focus. Now, in my administrative role, I do a lot of things where I'm not working directly with students, but often we do. We have student workers in our office. We're often highlighting students on the web about the great things that they do. So I get a chance to interact with students a little bit there. And then in the classroom is really where I get hands-on with students. So it's really nice to have kind of both, because in some institutions, I think the administration and the faculty are somewhat maybe siloed from a little bit from each other. It's like there's people who are staff, and then there's people who are faculty. And I've been fortunate. I think Widener's an institution where there's a lot more blending of those two audiences, but I've been fortunate to be really welcomed into communication studies. And our chair, Angie Corbo, who's amazing,
Absolutely.
And Amy and Jennifer, the other faculty in the department here, have really been welcoming, and I really feel like part of the team, which is fantastic.
I'd also personally say that even from the student perspective, that is definitely, I've realized that there's a lot of good meshing when it comes to everybody. It feels like a good home. I mean, our slogan is, our main thing is about Widener pride, the lion, and all that type of stuff. Like, we're really in a pact. So I understand exactly what you mean when you say that, like, it seems as if everybody is pretty well knit together.
Yep.
So what would you say is like a typical day for you at the current moment?
Not always the same, but you had asked me when we were talking earlier, to describe just what I did yesterday. So that might be a good way to go about this. But on a Monday morning, I come in. I'm usually here, I don't know, between 8 and 8:30 or something like that. And I've got, like I said, a team of communication professionals that I work with. And one of the things that I didn't mention when you asked me about, fulfilling aspects of my job that I actually have grown into over my career, and it's not anything I would have expected when I was a kid that I would have gotten to this point, but I've, led teams throughout my career and helped mentor people and pull folks together around a common goal to get work done. And as I've gotten older, I've really gotten to enjoy that part of my job. So meeting with my team, coaching them, helping them manage projects when they hit a wall and they need help going to administration, breaking down barriers for them or starting conversations, those kinds of things. So on a typical day, I'm, in my office meeting with my team. Nowadays, we're not all in the office at the same time because there's a lot of flex and remote work. So I might be meeting on Teams. I might have a couple Zoom meetings. And then every Monday and Wednesday, I'm here teaching in the late afternoon. So I'm always on campus, and I'll have a few meetings during the day. Sometimes I'll pop over here to Freedom Hall where we're recording and meet with students, teach my class. And then one of the other things I do in my administrative job is that because I teach audio and have some expertise there, I end up hosting podcasts for the university. I host a podcast called Far and Widener that features our alumni. So I'll be over here interviewing people for that sometimes. And then I'll help other people who are trying to do podcasts with technical things. So it's a nice blend of the administrative part, coaching my staff, meeting with the president and the leadership team to kind of understand their goals and strategies and bring that to my team, and then working hands-on with students. So I get to do like the whole gamut of things, from tactical things to strategic kind of forward-thinking things. So it's a nice blend. I feel very fortunate in that regard.
I'm very happy for you, actually. That sounds like a very productive day. I will not lie to you. So I guess with that, we can also tag in maybe a conversation on the Stereo Ready stuff.
Okay.
Actually.
Yeah.
So after you're done with everything at like Widener based, how is it going with the Stereo Ready band at the current moment as well? Yeah,
it's going well. So I'll backtrack a little bit. I've been, and you know this because we've been in classes together, I've probably told my story, and you've heard it a bunch of times, so I'll apologize if you're bored of this story.
Hey, man. It's always good hearing the story since it's something that you genuinely enjoy to talk about, so I understand.
So I when I was real little, like 5 years old, got into listening to music through, like the Chipmunks and Mr. Rogers and stuff like that or whatever. And I had a Chipmunks record that I took out of the library and I broke it. I went back to the library and I was very upset. And I said, I need another Chipmunks record. And I was looking through the albums and I saw a Beatles record. And I thought, Chipmunks, Beatles must be the same kind of thing, right? And my mom was like, I don't think that's what you're looking for. And I was like, no, I want this. And I took that home and listened to it. It was the Beatles Live at the Hollywood Bowl album.
Okay.
And it was really life-changing. Like, my life has never been the same from that point forward because I just became obsessed with music. I know you're a big music fan, too. That's one of the things that we love to vibe and talk about and chat about our musical interests. So music has been kind of a part of my life almost my entire life. I started playing guitar around that time, like 6, 7 years old. And then that's all I did. When I was a kid, I didn't play much sports. I played baseball for a couple of years, but I was really focused on playing my guitar, listening to records and music.
As you should.
Yeah, and I played in the band in school and all that stuff. So I've been doing that my whole life. And then I've been in bands since high school. And I started writing my own music when I was 7 or 8 years old. So I've done that my whole life, and I'm sure it wasn't very good until I was an adult, but practice makes perfect, right?
Of course.
And then in college, I started a band called Blank Pages, which I've released 7 or 8 albums with that group. The last one in 2020. And then during that time, I played in a bunch of different cover bands. So like for about 15 years, I played in a Beatles tribute band where we just played Beatles songs and we dressed in like Beatles suits and stuff. That was kind of fun.
That sounds pretty good.
And then I played for years in a band with a female singer where we could kind of do anything because you had a female singer. I sang, we had another male singer, and you could do almost any kind of music. So that was almost like a wedding band kind of situation where we just played rock, pop, country, Motown, just anything. And then around COVID time, that band sort of broke up. And then I played with some other friends for a little while. And then I started the Stereo Ready thing around COVID. And I ended up playing with a drummer who I met in college.
Okay.
And we had not talked for 25 years, not for any like bad reasons. We just lost touch with each other. And then I reconnected with him on Facebook. He was like, if you ever need a drummer again, let me know. I'd love to play with you again.
Oh, that's great.
So he and I are back in a band together, and then we're both in our 50s. And we have a bass player who's about 28 years old. So we've got like 2 separate generations of guys, which is great because we play covers when we play out mostly. And the young bass player brings kind of current ideas. Me and the other drummer kind of bring the older ideas, and we play a blend of music that kind of anyone who shows up will hear something they like.
Yeah, so so I think that actually might be good, specifically since you said earlier that Widener is already a mesh type of area where you're getting ideas from the students, from the older faculty and administration, all that type of stuff, and you're also doing the same exact thing when it comes to your own personal stuff as well.
Yeah.
And I feel like having that mesh where you are able to get the older perspective or get the younger perspective is always good so that you can connect instead of divide.
Yes, agreed. Totally.
That is always a great thing, especially in music, I'd say, because especially now, I would say that the older generation, when it comes to listening to my generation's music or something like that, they're confused at what's going on and everything like that. And sometimes they don't even get the chance to actually get that, to build that bridge and understand, like, okay, this is what's going on.
Right.
I can see why you would like that type of stuff like that. And you being able to have like a younger guy in your band sounds like a really good, mesh, basically. I guess that's just a base word to say when it comes to it. So,
he brings a perspective exactly as you're describing that I don't have, right? He's in a different generation, and as much as I try to keep up with music, and I do to some degree, but definitely as you get older, you kind of there's this whole adage that the music you listen to in like junior high school and high school sort of defines your life.
True.
And that's probably true for me, although I'm such a music fan that I've developed a lot of tastes and interest in bands throughout my whole life. And you and I have talked about this. I talk about this with everybody who will sit down and talk to me about music. I love to hear new things and learn new things. And one of the things I'm really trying to, that I hear you talking about and some other students in my class, I'm trying to break into that's tough for me is to really learn more and find music I like in the like hip hop and rap genres. You've actually helped me a lot with the hip hop kind of stuff, like Teddy Swims and some other things you've introduced me to. I really like that. So I'm just always trying to expand my horizons. But back to Stereo Ready. To wrap that one up is I've released a ton of my own music over the years with the Blank Pages thing, and now I'm getting ready to release some original music with Stereo Ready. We're a cover band mostly, and play about once a month around my area, and that keeps me busy. We rehearse like once a week and play once a month, so I think you were asking me how I fit all that in, and I just have a scheduled night every Wednesday. We try to rehearse. If we can make it, we make it. If we don't, we don't, and then we are recording some original music too, which is sort of a labor of love for me. So I've been doing it my whole life. So
All right, so thank you once again. I swear, like, talking to you is actually really, really entertaining because I'm able to get, I guess, the older perspective when it comes to music. And since you're like so much into it, and like to the point where it's been your entire life, it's always good to hear that aspect. So thank you once again.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So actually, since you have done so much, what would you say is currently like the top three things that you've accomplished in your career as of this moment?
So in my music life, I guess I'm probably most proud of the fact I've been able to throughout my life write my own stuff, collaborate with other musicians, and release that material and get some reaction to it. So I've certainly never been successful with the original music to the point where I'm making any money on it. It's just a labor of love. I've made some money over the years playing in a cover band, which has been nice pocket change, and I enjoy doing that. But I would say over the last 20 years or so, I've released, CDs, and back in the day when I started, we were releasing physical CDs. Would sell, 100 of those every time I would put them out, and I had like a little internet group of people who appreciated the genre of music that I was sort of labeled in, which I would say is guitar-based, like power pop rock kind of music. And I would get a handful of reviews from bloggers and things. So that was really satisfying to be able to create something and then put it out there, and a few people appreciate it and write some reviews, and you sell a little bit. And once or twice I covered my costs and broke even. So that's been extremely satisfying. Career-wise, I guess one of the things that I'm very proud of is we talked a little bit about the administrative role that I have, and then the teaching role that I have. And just earlier this year, I was nominated and received a teaching award, like a Excellence in Part-Time Teaching Award from Widener.
I might as well throw a little clapping sound effect. Might as well.
Yeah,
congratulations on that, of course.
Thank you for that. And that was a really nice thing to receive, because like we were saying, in some institutions, I've done some teaching at other places, it sort of feels like the adjuncts and the faculty, or the staff and the faculty, are kind of like in different silos. And like I said, the communications department's really made me feel like part of the team here. So I was surprised. I didn't realize I was receiving that award. So it was really, really gratifying.
That's great.
And then the other thing I guess I would say, as far as accomplishments, which falls outside of the realm of my career, is just in my personal life. My wife and I have been married for we just had our 25th wedding anniversary. We've been together since we were 15 years old. So I've known her for 30 plus years. We were actually, the funny story, we were in the same preschool class together because we grew up in the same town. Yeah.
That is awesome.
And her dad and my dad worked at the same university, and so we've known each other forever. And then we have a 13-year-old son. So having kids is an accomplishment. Lots of people do it. But trying to be a good parent and guide your children and help them to do the right things, I think, is where the secret sauce is in that, because anybody can have a kid, but you try to be a good role model. And I'm in the teenage years right now, so on some days it seems like I'm losing that battle. But
of course.
Overall, I think I'm doing pretty well. So
yeah, I'm not even gonna lie. At that age, I'm 13. I'm a jerk to be completely blatant about it.
I'm sure I was at 13 too. So
yeah. What would you say are three things that you want to still accomplish? Like, if there's anything maybe in either three of those aspects that you still want to accomplish in the future, you can start with either one of the three topics that you just talked about.
I'll tell you a funny story. So I grew up in a small town in New Jersey, and there was an old theater in my town that's still there, called the Broadway Theater. And right next to it, when I was growing up, was a recording studio called Horizon Recording Studio. So when I was like 10 years old, I'm like, one day I want to play at the Broadway Theater and record at the Horizon Recording Studios.
Okay.
And in high school, I guess it was in early college, I had a friend who got an internship at the recording studio, and he brought my band in and recorded us as a demo for his boss at the recording studio. So I actually fulfilled that dream.
That's great.
I never played at the Broadway Theater. So
right.
If I could do that one day, it would like fulfill a childhood dream that would just be fun. But that's not super high on my list. But I guess things I would like to do, I'd like to just continue to be able to make music and collaborate with other people and find some fulfillment in that as long as I possibly can. I mean, I'm in my 50s now, so packing up all the gear, going to a bar and setting up and playing every year takes a little bit more energy than it used to,
pretty, pretty stressful a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, I still love it, and I'm sure I'll do that for a while, but I'll do that as long as I can. But I'd like to continue to create music and enjoy that as long as I can in my life. And then I guess the other one would be, for my son to work his way into a successful life, career, all that kind of stuff. I'd like to mentor him and get him where he needs to go. Hopefully he'll go to college or go into some kind of trade or do whatever it is that makes him happy and successful. So that would definitely be a goal. I'd love to retire someday from, a full-time job and be able to chase all my passion projects, as I have a lot, but
That's great. Yeah. Well, hopefully you were able to complete all of those things. So since you actually touched on talking about the accomplishments the one accomplishment you were able to fulfill when you were younger.
Yeah.
How would you, at the current age that you are, what would you say is some advice that you would give to your younger self, to even, like, if somebody out there is currently trying to go into the same exact type of thing that you're in right now, what would you say would be one piece of advice that would get them on the road?
There's a couple pieces of advice that I picked up along the way from mentors, professors, people I've worked with that have really stuck with me. One of them is I had a professor in college who said half of being successful is just showing up. And there's so much truth to that. Not just the fact of just being there per se. And in your college classes, it's probably true. If you're just there, you're going to be more successful because you're going to hear the lecture, you're going to talk to the professor, you're going to be involved, you're going to be integrated. So that one's really stuck with me because it has a lot of different meanings, and having conversations, networking with people, being able to not be afraid to go back and leverage those relationships. Because that's one of the things I love about teaching and meeting people like you is, I make contacts with my students, and during my class I say, now that you know me, you're in my network forever. So if you ever need anything, give me a shout, and hopefully vice versa. Right. So that networking, showing up, being interactive with people is huge. One of the other pieces of advice I got from a great friend of mine who was my mentor at my hospital job, and I ended up being his boss later, which you'd think would be uncomfortable, but it wasn't, because he's such a fantastic human that we're still close friends. He just texted me a day or two ago asking me when we were going to get together for dinner.
That's nice.
But when I first started there, he was giving me some advice, and we were reporting to a vice president, and he said, if you go into a meeting with your boss, don't ever come into that meeting just with a bunch of questions. It's fine to have questions, but come up with possible solutions. So go into that meeting and say, I'm struggling with this thing and I have a question about it. Here's my question, and here are a couple ways that I thought maybe I could solve it. What do you think? Rather than just saying, Vaughn, I can't figure this out. What should I do? Yeah,
because that's a very open-ended thing that some people won't be able to give an answer to. I feel like if you also have solutions, it would definitely be able to give that person a rubric, I guess, of how to give you whatever advice they have. So I think that's actually pretty good.
Yeah. And I guess the other piece I would say is just getting to be comfortable and confident with who you are as a person, and constantly just trying to evaluate that. I mean, some people go through therapy, some people have relationships where they can talk with people and like sort of understand who they are. We all have like strengths and we all have weaknesses, and understanding like where your limitations are. I know where my limitations are. At least I try to stay cognizant of that. I try to get better with them over time, but I know there's certain things I'll never be that great at.
Right.
So, and as a boss, I'm leading a team. It's great to find people on your team who are good at those things, and you partner with them, and they make you stronger. Hopefully, you make them stronger. That kind of thing. So, understanding your strengths and your weaknesses, your limitations, where you excel. That's a lifelong journey.
Right.
But, I would tell myself as a young person to really focus on that. Jokingly, if I could give my young self any more advice, I would have told myself to spend about half the amount of time I did playing Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo, and just spend that time practicing my guitar or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that's some good advice. I will be honest. That's some advice I might have to take, to be thoroughly honest with you.
But I had some good times playing Street Fighter 2 in my friend's basement for hours on end in college,
Yeah, so it's all good. Speaking of, well, that's actually some really good advice. I have another question for you, because I remember, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but during class, we were having the conversation about even doing interviews or something like that. Yep. And I believe you said something about, as you were getting, like, I guess you can say, climbing through the ranks of getting to where you are at the current moment, you were kind of scared in some sort of way because you kind of felt out of place, or you didn't feel like you belonged in a certain sense. Right. And I'm actually, for my capstone, doing a project on imposter syndrome.
Yes.
They don't feel like they are supposed to be in a certain place because they haven't done certain things, or they just believe that there's a lot of different aspects that could have gotten them to a certain point, like luck maybe, or something like that. What would you say to people that actually don't feel like they belong where they are at the current moment, even in college specifically, and something like just that, basically?
Yeah. I think about this a lot because I still even feel like where I am in my life and my career, I suffer from imposter syndrome, fairly often, and the thing I've learned is that almost everyone does. Like, for example, there's some people on the leadership team here at Widener that I am fortunate to collaborate with, who are amazing at collecting, processing, analyzing data and spreadsheets and all that thing. And I always joke that I went into communications because my brain just doesn't like numbers, and I'm not good at math, right? But I've had to learn how to use data and look at spreadsheets and data for my career because I wandered into marketing, and that's a huge component of it. But I always feel a little bit like an imposter with that because it's just not in my brain set. So I would say that for people who are feeling that, it kind of goes back to what I was saying before about understanding where your strengths and weaknesses are is a good thing to kind of like build confidence in the areas where you think you bring value. But the ability to have conversations and talk with people like breaks down so much of that stuff. Like if you get to know someone and someone gets to know you and they understand where your strengths and weaknesses are, it helps to break down some of that imposter thing where you just build up this scenario in your head. It's like that person is more confident and they're talking all the time and they must be great and they must be like a person who's going to be super successful. And it sort of makes you feel like you're second class or not as good. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
And I've gone through that a million times in my life, and you and I have actually had this conversation before. I think just breaking down some of those walls and getting to know people on a personal level will take you to places you don't expect.
Right.
I mentioned this to you because you're doing this podcast. You're a good conversationalist. I think that's going to take you far.
I appreciate it. So actually on that, so I just recently, or I would say maybe like 2 years ago at this point, made a video where it was just me talking about like creative block and me not being able to be as creative as I used to be when I was in 10th grade. And at a certain point, I actually came across a quote from Theodore Roosevelt that was saying, "Comparison is the thief of joy."
I like that.
And that hit home for me specifically because of how much I was comparing myself to that younger version of me. And that also can literally be just taken into the aspect of looking at somebody else like you're second class and they're just doing all of this type of stuff. What is your thought process on that quote?
That is making my brain go in a million different directions, in the sense that I feel like throughout a lot of my creative journey, it's very easy to get stuck in this mode where you're expressing creativity about how great it was when you were a kid, or how great it was when you were in college, or how great it was back then. So that like backward looking kind of nostalgia.
Yeah.
And I've written lots of things about that. And I enjoy doing that, but it can sometimes get you stuck in that mode that you're talking about, because I've gone through ebbs and flows of creativity. I feel like right now I'm kind of in a pit right now, or in a trough where I'm not as creative as I would like to be. And I'm slowly getting back to it. I mentioned the project with the band and whatnot, but life sometimes just has a way of doing that to you.
Absolutely.
You might be busy with wrapping up college right now, trying to graduate. I'm busy. I have a 13-year-old son. He's got 1,000 activities. I'm driving him from here, there, and everywhere to get to his stuff. Work can be busy, and sometimes you just don't have as much capacity to be creative. And sometimes you got to create space for it, right? You have to be very intentional about creating space for it. But yeah, that comparison is the thief of joy thing is really interesting, because I think there's a lot of benefits to comparison as far as absorbing other things and like trying to find inspiration in that.
Right.
But it kind of brings me back to this idea of living in the moment. And that's a very cliched thing, but it's a very powerful thing. I'm at a point in my life where in my 50s now, I keep thinking to myself, I got to plan for retirement. I got to plan when I'm old and I'm not working anymore. And it's almost distracting me from living in the moment right now. I'm still in my early 50s. I'm like, dude, just live in the moment. I'm doing my best to plan for later in my life, but I can't let it distract me from being in the moment.
Yeah. I feel like it's also it's a concept of giving yourself some time to at least get out of the mindset of that you are. I'm going to keep referencing that whole second class thing that you said, because I feel like in a certain moment, you will always feel like, oh my God, I'm not doing this, that, and the third, or I have a bunch of stuff to do, but I don't know if I'm able to do it because of whatever reasons. And I feel like a good thing for fixing that would be to just give yourself like 5 minutes to breathe.
Yeah. Or even an hour a day, sometimes, right? A weekend. Yeah.
Because it always gets to a moment where there's so many things going on in your head and you don't know like where to start in a certain thing, so then you get overwhelmed with everything. And then even when somebody sits here and says, hey, relax, you're doing fine at the current moment, you need to relax and just like think first.
Right.
But there's so much there's a storm going on in your head, so you don't know what to do. You will always have 5 minutes. That's why I said 5 minutes specifically, because you might not have an hour, but you have 5 minutes.
You might have talked about this on a previous episode of the podcast I listened to. Right? I think on episode 1 you talked about this, and I actually, that was one of the things I took away from the first episode that I really liked, this idea of 5 minutes. I think it's a really good one. And as you go through life too, you'll get more and more experience with just time management of your life. How do you cope with those things? Is it, I've got 25, 30 years on you, I guess, at this point, right? And I still have those moments where it's like there's so many things I feel like I have to do that it's like crushing, and it like disables you from being able to start anywhere. So I've come up with some tactics I think that work for me over the years. Like I used to, when I was younger, I'd go to a meeting and there would be a bunch of things that like come out of the meeting that are my responsibility. And I'd be like, okay, I just got out of this meeting and these things aren't due for 2 weeks. So I'll do them in 2 weeks. And now as I'm older, I get out of meetings and I immediately afterwards, I'm like, what do I have to do? Let me plan this. Anything I can do right now, let me just do it right now. Yeah. It might be something as stupid as at the end of the meeting, someone's like, Vaughn, we should get together and talk about that. Let's schedule a meeting next week. And instead of leaving it for 4 days later, I'll just get off the meeting and schedule it right then. Just little things like that. And everybody works differently with this kind of time management thing. But that's something that if you can continue to evolve that and get yourself to a comfortable place, it can be really life-changing, because feeling that crush of not being able to get underneath of all those things that you got to do is it's hard. It
hurts a lot, mainly because you don't know how to get over it in the moment. So, and then the worst part about it is the first thing you'll end up doing, or at least I'll speak for myself, is beat yourself up about it.
Right.
You will go and you will end up sitting there for 5 minutes worrying because, you have all of these things, or you have currently nothing, and you need to get all of these things done. And because of that, you'll dwell on it for a long period of time, and you'll take more time worrying about the problem than actually getting to the end of the problem.
So true. Yeah.
And something that, and I think I referenced this also in episode 1, a quote that my brother had talked about, where it was like, instead of thinking so much about the issue, worry about the actual solution of it. And that actually circles back to what you said when it comes to talking to a boss, something like that, or an interview or something like that, and you're just like saying, I have all these questions, but these are some solutions that I have. Like, I feel like if you have that, then you're in a better state than just simply, I have this assignment, I have this meeting, I have this, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it all. And then I'm sitting there for an hour crying over this thing. Yeah. And once you get out of that moment, you'll realize that maybe the problem wasn't even that serious.
There's an interesting other side to that coin that I've learned being in a relationship with my wife for the last 35 years. And that is, to your point, I think I am that person who, when things get that way, I immediately like go into this problem solving mode. It's like, okay, what's the issue? And like your brother said, okay, that's the issue. Now I'm going to figure out like 4 ways that I can try to solve this issue rather than just dwelling on the issue, which in work and other instances might be great. But in relationships, sometimes it's not great, because my wife will be like, well, I didn't need you to come in and figure out like 6 things for me to do right now. All I needed was I needed to vent. I needed your support. I needed your emotional support. I needed you to listen to me.
Right.
So I'm really trying to be better about that in conversations, and just let people talk sometimes and not be constantly like trying to find the next solution. I'm not very good at that. That's my brain immediately goes there.
I think that's just because we're men. So that's kind of like a thing that... Yeah. Well, at least from what I've heard growing up, that's just what we end up doing by default. And we need to get out of that mindset a little bit, because at least I realize that we don't need to always be trying to fix it at the moment that there's a problem. We just have to be there for the person that we're with to understand that they're going through something, hear them talk, hear them like explain their emotions. And then once you validate those emotions and you realize, okay, I get where you're coming from. You're being heard. I understand this. Do you want some time, or do you want to try to fix this now?
Right. Exactly.
And I feel like that might be a good way to do that.
Yeah. Let me turn the tables on you real quick. Just going back to creativity. You mentioned poetry in the first episode.
Yes.
Where are you with your poetry journey? Are you at a high, at a low? Are you getting stuff done, or what's happening with that? Hey
man, I'll say for that, I am very much on a low when it comes to it.
Yeah.
I need to get back into it, because I'm pretty sure I talked about in the first episode as well, I have been very lackadaisical when it comes to it. It's mainly because I guess it's not even the fact that I'm lackadaisical. It's the fact that I'm currently in a moment of my life where I'm not where I used to be when it comes to writing poetry.
Yep.
Because when I was writing poetry, I was always like, there was like certain situations I was in where it was very stressful or very emotional times.
Mm-hmm. And you were reacting to that.
Exactly. And then I think there would also be moments where I was having just like a regular, like there wouldn't be a single moment that I'm like dealing with, and I would just hear a song that really brings something out of me, and then I can do it. At the current moment, I'm just kind of, I guess, living life so I can write.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be a good way of doing it, but I'm gonna try to get back into it though.
Yeah.
Actually, episode 2, I read, or I showcased two poems.
I apologize. I haven't listened to episode 2 yet, so I'll have to check that out.
If you haven't listened to episode 2, go ahead and listen to that. I had a good time actually putting that together. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
And even going back to actually explaining what those poems were about brought me to understand what was going on during them.
Yep.
And I realized, I think writing those poems and then going back to reading them has helped me mature, because I mean, obviously if you zoom out, I guess, as I would say, and go back to that point where you were at, you realize where you might have messed up, or you realize what exactly was the problem if you didn't already know, and then you can reevaluate that for the rest of your life. And that can go to that can go to relationships, that can go to your work, that could go to family life, literally anything. So I mean,
that's one of the best pieces of advice I think I can give now, 51 years in, is that I have a similar like library of things that I've created through my music, and it's music and words. So a lot of it is like poetry. And I have recordings of all of my original material going back to when I was a, sophomore in high school.
Right.
And I still listen to some of that stuff for that exact same reason. It like it's a diary of my life.
Yes.
And it's been super helpful in kind of being able to understand my progression and some of those things about knowing what you're good at, what you're not good at, or journeys that you've been on that help you understand why you're where you are. And it also has kind of given me an appreciation of that imposter syndrome, coming back to that a little bit. Like when you get into the creative mode, sometimes, at least maybe you get to the same place I do, where I'm working on something or I'm trying to write something. I'm like, this isn't good enough, or people aren't going to like this.
Perfectionist.
It's not going to, who is this appealing to? And, unless you're doing it as your full-time career, which neither one of us are right now, maybe you will, and you'll be a successful poet, but
at some point,
doing it for yourself, I think is probably the best advice I can give. Because even if you look at very successful artists, the ones that really make a big impact are the ones that like think outside of the box, or really just create something that isn't for mass audience. It's a reflection of them, and that's what art is, right? So the reflection of the human experience. I read or hear something that you wrote, and I'm like, wow, that speaks to me because I've experienced that too, or I hadn't thought about that. That's really thought-provoking. So that's, to me, what art is.
Yeah. And I say that goes into literally anything. It could be, I guess, a way I can also describe it in a different way is like gaming. Like within these companies now, there is like a niche where it comes to like, oh, it needs to be this type of game where it's a shooter, or this type of game where it's a sports game, and that's just where it is. But I feel like the games that like are the most impactful are the ones that actually like go outside the box, aren't specifically on that exact genre of games. Because there was a whole kick with battle royale games when it came to Fortnite or something like that, and getting a different type of game or something like that, getting a different type of spoken word poet or something like that. Like it brings a new aspect to what's going on, and it's a breath of fresh air as well. So it kind of, I don't know how close knit those two things were together, but I mean, that's kind of another way I can explain it.
I'm feeling it.
Last but certainly not least, since you are so heavily into music, and I've been giving a plethora of music suggestions to the audience. Currently, what would you say is your favorite genre of music, and also what would you say are the top 3 favorite songs that you currently have?
So people sometimes ask me this question about like, what's your favorite song? What's your favorite album? And I listen to so much stuff. I almost can't answer that question and say definitively, this is my favorite album or this is my favorite song. I'm going to give a plug for a podcast that I do with a friend of yours, who you know, Mike Gemma, who is a Widener grad who graduated 1 year ahead of you, who's a fantastic guy.
Very, very much so.
And he and I have been doing a podcast together for a year and a half now called Epic Albums, which you can find on all the streaming services. And Mike is the music director, so he picks an album, and we have very similar musical tastes, but he'll pick an album, we both listen to it, and then we pick our favorite songs on it. And then we go on the podcast and discuss and kind of share our thoughts. And that's been a fantastic experience for me because he likes a lot of the old records. He's really into 60s, 70s, and 80s music. And he likes a lot of stuff I grew up with. And it's given me a chance to listen to those things and just take a completely different view of it, being older, diving deep into it, looking for meaning, listening for things I hadn't heard before. So that's been an awesome experience. As far as genres go, and where I was going with that is that I think I could probably point to the latest record that we're doing on that as the thing I'm listening to and absorbed in right now. So I'll get to that in a second. But as far as genres go, I mean, I love I grew up listening to the Beatles, so I kind of love that classic rock, jangly, melodic guitar thing, because I'm a guitar player. I've been playing guitar since I was 6. So I love guitar, melodic rock music like the Beatles and the Byrds, and then there's a whole subgenre of power pop of bands like Badfinger, and like I love new wave music from the late 70s and early 80s, like the Knack and the Cars, and I love modern rock from the 90s. I went to college in the 90s, so I listened to an artist called Matthew Sweet, who is sort of like a revivalist of those genres, and I heard all of the grunge stuff like Pearl Jam and Nirvana and all those kinds of things. I love kind of like 70s funky music and soul. That's something that you and I have connected on. I was just having a conversation with someone the other day, and they said James Brown. Yeah. And I was like, I just had a conversation with one of my favorite students about James Brown, and he was listening to his greatest hits and really loving it. Yeah. I love soul music from the 70s, like Al Green and Marvin Gaye, and Stevie Wonder kind of is somewhere in his own space.
Some of the
he's
best
incredible
soul artists, right? Yeah, absolutely.
So those are probably like my main genres. I dabble a little bit in jazz, but I feel imposter syndrome with jazz because I just don't know it and understand it that well. But I enjoy it on its surface. But and I love my favorite thing is melody. If something has a good melody, I'm in. So you've sent me some stuff, and it's been like these R&B singers from a couple years ago, and then it has a great vocal melody. I'm like, I love this. Yeah. So anything that's got a good melody, I can get behind, and I like pop music from, the 50s through today. So circling all the way back to answer your question, that was a long response. But,
hey man,
Mike and I are listening to this week an album by The Clash, which is a punk band from the late 70s from England. And punk as a genre is not really my favorite, but some of the punk bands had really great melodic elements to them, like the Ramones and the Sex Pistols all had songs that have like cool melody to them that I really like. And The Clash was sort of the band of that group that sort of broke the mold, because they started as punk and then they added in like reggae vibes and ska and jazzy things and rock things. So they were just, as we were talking about, they took it outside of the box. They took punk to a new place. So we're listening to this album, London Calling, which is sort of their most famous album, and some people say it's like the most influential album of that time period. Okay. And so the songs I've been listening to on that are the title track called London Calling, the song called Lost in the Supermarket, where he's using an analogy of walking around in a supermarket and being felt like his whole being is kind of served up to him in a consumerist world where he's supposed to. The lyric is he's lost in the supermarket. He came in to shop, but he came in for a special offer, a guaranteed personality, where the things in the supermarket are just kind of like dictating who he is and who he should be. So that's a really cool lyric. And then there's a famous song on that album too called "Train in Vain," which is sort of you might have heard. If I played it for you, you'd probably heard it's one of the Clash's famous songs. That's sort of a broken-hearted song about a partner who didn't support the singer, and the relationship kind of broke up. So it's a typical broken heart story. But
sounds interesting. Yeah.
So The Clash, that's what I've been listening to this week on repeat.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. Well, we have talked you guys' ear off for quite a lot of time at this point. So thank you so much for listening to the Zoom Out podcast. I am Vaughn Baptiste, and this was the lovely Greg Potter from Stereo Ready. Thank you guys so much for listening once again. Please listen to this on anything that is on. It's most likely going to be on Apple Music. It's not Apple Music, Apple Podcasts at some point, but it's just on Spotify at the current moment. Please rate it 5 stars, comment. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a poll on this episode, so do that as well. Thank you guys so much once again. You guys have been lovely. And all right, we're out. Bye-bye.